Okay, so you can see I've added the DOT reflective stripes. You guys know my method for these. I just use the Western Safety reflective tape. I cut out strips to scale size. I actually have a chart that I measured all the scales and everything. That way I can cut these out pretty quickly. I don't have to sit there and try to guesstimate or refer to another car that I've done. I just have a measurement. So they're pretty easy to cut out. They're very quick. And I have a huge roll of them, as you guys know. They're available from Harbor Freight Tools. You guys can get a big roll of that safety tape if you want to know where to get that. You can use the Smokebox Graphics reflective stripes as well. They're pretty much about the same size. So it's your choice there. Anyway, looking at the last stages of weathering here, I've went ahead and gotten everything clear coated here. So all of this is sealed up, and I'm ready to go ahead and move on to the powders. And I'm going to be using my standard mixture of my weathering powders, my AIM Products weathering powders. I got a medium rust, chalky white, and then a brighter rust tone. This is the fresh rust. For some heavier rust patches, which I'll probably focus on the top coat here. And I also have my earth brown chalk, which is from an old pastel sheet I had from years ago. I'm going to be using that. I have my selection of weathering brushes. These are specifically for the chalks. I've got a large medium Citadel brush, and then my small Citadel brushes, which have the flat ends. As you can see, I've worked these into a flat end so I can apply powders with these. Very nice. Basically, they're a large version of one of these micro brushes here. One of these guys is my idea here, but I'm also going to be using the micro brush, and I'm going to be using the micro brush to start off with this project. We need to enhance these gouges and scratches on the sides that we've done with the oils, and the powders are going to enhance these. The idea here is I go in and just add a little highlight of this powder to some of these gouges to represent some fresher rust streaks, because you see this variation of color on these scratches on these cars, and I'm just kind of trying to follow the pattern of the rust that I've already done with the oils. I'm not hitting every one of these stripes. I'm only hitting a couple of them. Only a couple have these differing variations of heavier rust, so I only want to hit up a couple of these. But this is a great way to enhance your hand-painted rust details like this. You'll see how good this looks in a second. But I'm just going to do this to each panel for each rib. Area to concentrate this rust on is these corner gussets. These center posts here for these ribs and bracing, they usually collect a lot of rust and everything, and what you see is the rust sort of start to collect at the top of these, and then it'll start streaking down. And this is a great task for the micro brush because you can get in and be pretty precise with this. The line doesn't have to be perfectly straight. I just kind of go in there and then add the basic outline of the rust like this, kind of sloppily. You guys can see I'm not trying to be perfect here. What we're going to do is I'll go back with the brush. I'm going to hit all of this up here and all of this up so it'll clean it up and straighten it out a little bit, so we don't have to get too anal about this right now. But we're just going to basically repeat this process for the entire side of the car on these center posts here. Just adding these little rust streaks. Remember, it's all these little parts and all these little details that you want to pay attention on cars like this, because each one of these little separate parts gathers rust in different ways. It starts to rust differently, it starts to gather grime differently, and we want to replicate that here. You don't want everything to look the same on this car. After I'm happy and satisfied with how my gouges and everything have come out, as you can see, they really stand out and they look pretty good on this car. But they're too bright at the moment and we need to dull them down. Also, we need to go ahead and start enhancing some of these rust streaks. You can do this again with the micro brush, and what I'm going to basically do is streak all of this rust and everything down like this. We want to have some of that fresh rust kind of starting to streak a little bit, because that's what you see on these cars. So I'm going to kind of position the car at an angle here. We'll start at this corner, and I'm going to take my Citadel brush. Again, you can use a micro brush if you really want to. Depends on what you want to do there. It's totally your call. But I'm going to be using my chalk, my small Citadel brush, specifically for chalks here, to go in and kind of streak down some of the rust like this. Because you see this, you see a lot of this rust from this, from these gouges start to kind of streak down the car body, and it's important that we hit all this up to make that look a little bit more realistic. If you really, again, want some more concentrated rust streaking, use the micro brush for this. But for larger areas like this, I prefer the brush. It's a bit quicker, and you can fill in a lot more space. But if you want a lot more precise lines and stuff like that, again, like I said, you can use the micro brush. It's your call there. But I'm just going to streak all this down. I'm going to repeat this entire process for both sides and the ends as well. It's going to be the exact same process. I'll demonstrate the end next here so you guys get a basic idea of what I'm doing. The ends, just like before, we're just going in and adding our rust right on these gouges kind of randomly. This is just to enhance it, like I said. I'm going to do this on each panel. The nice thing about the micro brush too, you can get in behind the ladders and everything, which is very nice. Grab a little bit more powder here. And I'm not knocking any of the powder off this brush. I'm completely loading up the bristles of the brush and then transferring it straight to the model. I'm really not putting too much pressure on this micro brush either, in case you guys want to know. It's basically gliding across the surface here, applying a very small amount of powder at a time, and it's pretty controlled as well. Now these C&D cars, they get pretty dirty. They get a lot of mud kicked up on the trucks and all over the underbody, and I want to go pretty heavy with this white chalky grime first on the trucks. I'm not going to worry about the rust and anything else. We'll take care of that in a second. That'll be the overlay over this. But right now I just want to completely coat the underbody with this white powder to go ahead and just start adding some of this highlight. Notice I'm getting it in the wheels, which is good. I'm getting it all over the truck, and I'm going to start working it under the underbody here as well, on the coupler box. Kind of sloppily, it doesn't have to be necessarily too perfect here, but I just want to get it on all of these parts and little components on the underbody here. Notice, again, I'm using my Citadel, my medium Citadel brush. It's a great brush for this effect because it's soft bristles, so you can get in all this fine detail on the underbody and you're not going to have to worry about ripping it off. That being said, you still got to exercise a little bit of care with a brush like this. You still want to be a little bit careful, but we just coat the whole underbody. Notice I'm not being too perfect here. No one's going to see this underbody, these underbody panels here. I have weathered these earlier with an airbrush, but I'm not worrying about the final details there because you're not really going to see that. I'm worrying about the main details like the trucks and stuff like that. Is really what I want to focus on with this. So we're just laying all the powder in the wheels, getting everything coated. There we go. Once I've done that, what I'll go back and do, I'll start laying in a little bit of my chalk, and I'm going to kind of mix this in with a little bit of my rust tone, or medium rust rather, from AIM, but I just kind of hit the base of the truck here around the springs is where you see it. The majority of that rust kind of build up, just like that. And I'm going to kind of move this down the sides as well, just in various little parts, hitting all these little individual components as well, because you do get a lot of rust buildup on these, and so it's important to get these all covered up as well. Just here and there. Same thing with this truck here on the end. Just a light brushing, not trying to get too aggressive with this. But you can see what that does. It gives us a nice grimy, chalky color. The wheels all have that dusty powder in them as well, which I want to keep. That looks really good. Now what I want to do, I'll just go back and hit up these springs with a little bit more of a concentrated rust powder, and I'm going to just pick up a very, very minute amount of this. Not that much, and I'm going to kind of load my bristles up like that, and then I'm going to scrape it off the edge like that, and then just very lightly, just like that. Just rub that on there. Not that much. Again, underbody components, they get a little bit of this powder as well. Alright, so you can see I've went ahead and installed our custom C&D load, which I've made here to fit this particular car. By the way, I have a video coming out on how to make these exact loads here, so that'll be coming up next year, so you guys can watch out if you want to know how to make these improved C&D loads. They're a lot better than the original ones I made, so it'll be a good refreshing video, or a refresher video, I guess, on how to make these loads. Anyway, we're looking at the top cord now, and we're going to go ahead and start applying the powders to this, and I'm going to be using a pretty heavy layer of the bright rust. I'm actually going to take a little bit more and put this in my cap here. I'm starting to run out a little bit. There we go. And then I'm just going to go down the side this top cord gets very beat up. Remember that. And you see a lot of this fresh rust on the top. You do get some variations, and again, refer to prototype photos. You can vary it up a little bit. Some of these are a little bit more grimy. Some of these are a little bit more rusty, like this one happens to be. And some of them just have mud splatter caked all over them, so you can't even see any rust. It's just pure white. Most of the time you get a variation of the mix, where you have some mud splatter, you have the rust, and stuff like that that kind of bleeds out. So you can kind of vary it, you know, again, depending on what you want to try to achieve there. You can kind of vary it as much as you like, but I'm going to be mixing all three together here. But you can see this is pretty easy to apply. I just kind of go in gradual layers and just apply it. I'm kind of avoiding the ends for the most part because I don't want to get too crazy with those because they are freshly repainted. There is some rust that starts to kind of accumulate on the ends, but that's about all you see. So a light dusting is fine. I did just go ahead and add a little bit of oils to the ends there, just in certain spots to kind of represent a few scratches and nicks in the fresh paint. But for the most part, this is what we've got to start with. Now, for certain little areas, I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to get some of that bright, fresh rust here. And I'm just going to add it to areas like where these dents, for example, are, because you see a lot of rust kind of accumulate on those. And I'm only going to hit these areas up with this powder for that reason. I just want to represent the fresh dents. This is a very concentrated color again, so, you know, try to go somewhat light on it for the most part. I'm not going to get too much crazier than that. But just work it in like that. And the same thing on this opposite side here. Just pick up a little bit of powder and hit up these dents. Just like this. Remember, these rust pretty heavily, so you want to go in pretty heavily with this rust just to enhance some of these. Again, have that variation color, that little bit extra bit of realism.